Everybody. I think we'll start by turning straight to Acts 13, please. Acts 13 and verse 14. I'm probably going to pronounce some of this wrong, so forgive me in advance. But when they've departed from Perga, they came to Antioch in Pisidia, and went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and sat down. And after the reading of the law and the prophets, the rulers of the synagogue sent unto them, saying, Ye men and brethren, if ye have any word of exhortation of the people, say on. Then Paul stood up and beckoned with his hand, Men of Israel, and ye that fear God, give audience. The Lord God of this people of Israel chose our fathers and exalted the people when they dwelt as strangers in the land of Egypt, and with an high arm brought them out of it. And about the time of 40 years suffered he their manners in the wilderness. And when he had destroyed 7 nations in the land of Canaan, he divided their land to them by lot. And after that he gave unto them judges about the space of 450 years until Samuel the prophet. And afterward they desired a king, and God gave unto them Saul the son of Cis, a man of the tribe of Benjamin, by the space of 40 years. And when he had removed them, he raised up unto them David to be their king, to whom also he gave testimony, and said, I have found David, the son of Jesse, a man after mine own heart, which shall fulfill all my will. So I was recently in Lismore last weekend, and at the end of the second talk in the fellowship up there, Pastor Peter Cannon mentioned this, David being a man after the Lord's own heart, and I've heard it a few times before, but never really, considered what that means. And I guess it started me thinking that's a pretty cool thing for the Lord to say, that you've got a man after his own heart, and how I started thinking about how that's something I would desire that the Lord would think of me, and that how can we all desire to be that, and how can we achieve that? So I guess my talk is going to be looking on the characteristics of David, and it's only just going to skim the top of it, because obviously his personality is a lot more complex than I can do in 12 minutes, but I definitely want to point out at least 3 things. So the first thing I want to talk about is courage. So if we turn to 1 Samuel 17, so obviously, he's most well known, not even only by us, but also by the world, for defeating Goliath, and it's still an anecdote that people refer to. And I guess that's pretty obvious, but I guess I wanted to talk about it in a bit more depth. So if we start in verse 47, this is David here talking to Goliath. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he'll give you unto our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the enemy to meet the Philistine. So obviously we know this story, but I really do want to take a minute to appreciate that David at this point is a boy, and he is not only running at a grown man, but an absolute monster of a man, with nothing but his clothes on his back, a sling, and his staff. That's pretty impossible odds, and that takes a lot of courage. But it's not the courage that he's got is not in himself. It's not that he's trusting in his own strength. He says here that it's not my battle, but the Lord's. So he has all that trust that the Lord's going to deliver him. And he had that much courage that not only did he wait for Goliath to come to him, he actually ran at Goliath. And I think that's pretty inspiring. And I guess I want to talk about how that applies to us a bit. So we might turn to Joshua 1. I guess I want to draw a little bit of a parallel between stuff that David did back then and how we can draw on the same attributes or virtues in our lives today. So we'll start in verse 8. This book of the law shall not depart out of thy mouth, and thou shalt meditate therein day and night, that thou mayest observe to do according to all that is written therein. For thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and thou shalt give good success. Have I not commanded thee? Be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee whithersoever thou goest. So I think what I take away from this is that the Lord's telling us here to have courage, and that's something that David had through the Lord. And in our situation, courage, I think, means a courage to go out and speak to people, and we can pray about it, and we don't even have to pray and wait for someone to fall in our lap. We can pray and then take the initiative and go out and find people that need to hear the word, and having that as much courage as David did, because we know that this book of law is in us now with the Holy Spirit, and it's not going to depart from us. It's never going to leave us. The next thing I would like to talk about is humbleness. So if we turn to 2 Samuel, chapter 12. So we're going to start in verse 4, but just to give a little backstory, just on the few verses before, the prophet Nathan is talking to David about how the Lord sent Nathan to, I guess, open David's eyes to what he's done wrong when he commits adultery with Bathsheba and has a kid. But we'll start in verse 4. He's kind of given the analogy that there's this one rich man with many sheep, and there's this other poor man with one little lamb, so we'll pick up in verse 4. And there came a traveller unto the rich man, and he spared to take of his own flock and of his own herd, to dress for the wayfaring man that was come unto him, but took the poor man's lamb, and dressed it for the man that was come to him. And David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and he said to Nathan, As the Lord liveth, the man that has done this thing shall surely die. And he shall restore the lamb tenfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. And Nathan said to David, Thou art the man. So it's a bit of a slap in the face, I guess. David would have known that he's done something wrong, but to have someone come up and tell him straight to his face that he's done something wrong is pretty, I guess, intense. And obviously later on in this story, David goes on to hear that his son's going to die, and he prays and fasts that it doesn't, and it does. And then he has to, I guess, he shows a huge change in his mindset, and is really humble and just says, well, that's what the Lord wanted, so it's happened, kind of thing. But what I want to focus on is notice how humble David was towards Nathan. So if we just read verse 13. And David said unto Nathan, I have sinned against the Lord. And Nathan said unto David, The Lord also hath put away thy sin, thou shalt not die. So not only was he humble towards the Lord, but he didn't just get angry at Nathan for pointing out something he's done wrong. And I guess sometimes our brothers and sisters can come towards us with something that they would like to come towards us with, a guiding hand or some love that they'd like to try and help us with. But sometimes we can just deflect it as it's their opinion, and I don't think they're right, kind of thing. But the Lord's put His Spirit in all of us so that we can be discerning and that we can help each other and guide each other, and that's what we're here for. That's what makes it easier than if we were just walking by ourselves. But this also doesn't mean that every little thing that is said to you that you should obsess about. We need to exercise our own discernment and have an honest look at ourselves if something's said, that we need to have an honest look at ourselves and see ourselves from the Lord's point of view, because the world wants us to compare with everyone else, and that's just how it is. But the Lord wants us to compare ourselves to His Word and to Jesus, and that's what we should be focusing on. And I'm going to run out of time, but I want to turn to Isaiah 55. In verse 6, seek ye the Lord while he may be found, call ye upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return unto the Lord, and he will have mercy upon him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. I guess here is just another reminder of to be humble when that the Lord knows what's best for us, and like David would have had to come to terms with. And I guess I want to make the point that we have to be a moldable clay for the Lord to work on us. We can't be dry and hard, and when he tries to give us some direction, nothing happens. We need to actually be soften ourselves with the Spirit and actually letting the Lord put his peace in our hearts. Because sometimes, I know for myself, we can pray and desire and ask the Lord for a situation to give us some peace about it. But if we're ourselves actually not opening our hearts to receive the Lord's peace, we're not actually going to get it. Because we need to be, sometimes you can hold some sort of bitterness or some grudge, or you kind of just don't want to let it go, but the Lord needs us to open up our hearts that he can just fill us with this peace that we are willing to take. In Luke 9, it talks about Jesus saying we must lose our lives that we might gain it, that we have to put away our own things and take up his stuff so that we're not holding on to the things of our life, that we can be full. My last thing for David is I want to talk about passion. So we'll turn to 2 Samuel, but we'll speed through it because I'm already over. Second Samuel 6. Verse 12. And it was told King David, saying, The Lord hath blessed the house of Obadiah, and that all pertaineth unto him because of the ark of God. So David went and brought up the ark of God from the house of Obadiah unto the city of David with gladness. And it was so that when they that bare the ark of the Lord had gone 6 paces, he sacrificed oxen and fatlings. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, and David was girded with a linen ephod. So here it continues on to talk about Saul's daughter is upset with how David's, acting, and thinks that it's not royal that a king should act like this, dancing in the street dressed as a priest. But it's really just David expressing his joy and passion for the Lord. And that's something that we can see throughout a lot of his Psalms, just this overwhelming love that he has for the Lord. And to quote Psalms 30, Thou hast turned for me my mourning into dancing. Thou hast put off my sackcloth and girded me with gladness, to the end that my glory may sing praise to thee and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks unto thee forever. So here, what this is saying is that he wants to reciprocate what the Lord does for us, because he does so much for us. And this passion is coming from a place where it's a relationship where he wants to give as much as he can, even though he knows that it's not going to be anywhere near as what the Lord can give us. And being thankful can benefit us so much sometimes, more than we can think it might. And in Matthew 6, it tells us that the Father knoweth the needs that we have before we even ask him. And so sometimes just having a prayer of thanks can really lift my spirits, rather than focusing on stuff that I might want or need. And in Matthew 25, Jesus is talking about his separating his sheep from the goats, and I guess talking about how it might look for us, showing our love or reciprocating the Lord's love towards us. Jesus talks about it as clothing one another, feeding one another, visiting one another when we're in prison, and just being hospitable to one another. And he says that the love that we show each other, it's showing love to him, and that's how I guess we can show our passion to the Lord like David did. And I think one of the biggest reasons the Lord chose David was because he was moldable, because he was willing to open up his heart and open up himself that the Lord could shape in whatever the Lord needed him to be. And the Lord's chosen us for the same reason, that we should adopt this same mindset that know that he'll go before us when we witness, and that he's going to continue to shape us and let us grow if we're humble. And although the love of God is incomparable to what we can give him, we should rejoice and sing praises of him with our whole heart, and give as much as we can to our brothers and sisters. All the people said.